Hey folks, we're back again for another chapter of this painting that we're trying to finish up here. So I did do a little bit off camera. Maybe I don't know if you can tell or not, but up here in the background, and you'd probably have to compare it to an earlier video to tell, but I just added a couple more layers of dark and light kind of value here. Nothing too severe or contrasty, but I just didn't like the flatness of the background. So I went in and added just some kind of variation on some of the, you see that kind of texture that I've created there? Just to kind of get rid of the flatness. It still reads as a kind of like a single color, but there's just a little bit of texture added in there. And it's not like bumpy or anything, but it's just visual texture, just to kind of give it a little bit of interesting, just visual interest, I guess. And I also worked on the shadows a little bit here, and you can kind of see that the shadows are no longer like really flat like they were. But I didn't use black. This is all just a combination of brown with a little bit of red and a little bit of blue paint, because I had kind of a bluish hue to the shadows, which you can sort of see here in the photo reference, right? There's a little bit of kind of purplish shadows back there. So I kind of wanted to simulate that, but with really soft edges. And I kind of accentuated the yellowishness of it's like a white piece of paper back there, but with the yellow light that I have, it's got a yellowish hue to it, and I just sort of exaggerated the yellow hue just a little bit. I pushed it a little further, which, you can do with a painting. You can take a little bit of license, because I felt that the yellow really helped to bring out some of the other colors. So it's not a harsh yellow. It's just a, kind of a subdued, almost like a tone. So I've just kind of added some very subtle sepia, brownish elements to that background to kind of give it a little surface interest there. Okay, but I'm still not finished with this. I need to go back, and I'm going to work a little bit on the cloth, try to get a few wrinkles in there, make it read more like cloth. Maybe work on blending the shadows a little bit more. And then I'm going to go back and just do finishing touch-ups to the fruit. I'm pretty happy with the way the fruit has kind of turned out, and you can see here by going back and adding some more glazes of flat color over some of these objects, it's really helped to push everything back. Remember, I had that big white splotch there because I was trying to cover something up. Well, I just put a little bit of orange, flat orange on top, and that made it tie together really, really nicely, I think. So, now I'm just going to kind of work on the cloth a little bit, and just try to put a few more little finishing touches on some of these objects, and then I think I'll be done. So I'm hoping to try to finish the painting in this next session if I can. All right. So hopefully things will go smoothly. Hopefully I won't have any more trouble with video cutting out on me or whatever. But all right. So as always, I'm going to put a little paint on my palette. Hopefully you guys can see this. Again, I'm kind of using the same palette here. So I'm going to put some red, not a lot, a little bit of red, a little bit of brown, and again, you can use store-bought brown. This is burnt sienna. Or you can mix a brown by combining red, yellow, and blue together. Got a little bit of phthalo blue. And then finally, a little bit of white. Don't think I'm going to really need any yellow right now, but if later on I decide I need some, I'll put some out there. But I think for now, this will be all I need for the cloth. So, got my water, got my brushes and my paper towel over here on the side. Okay. So, let's get a brush and get started. Now again, the first thing that I can do here is try to reactivate some of this color and sort of mix a purplish color, but very muted. You see how this is, got a lot of gray in it, got a lot of white in it. So definitely want to make it match, but again, it doesn't have to be a complete match. Remember, if the color varies a little bit, if there's a slight little change there, that's actually gonna make it look better. Because remember, when you look at something in real life, there are subtle variations based on light and color and other things. So get a little bit of red, mix it off to the side. Make sure your brush is wet. Little bit of blue. Doesn't take much. Also got a little bit of brown mixed in there. Okay, now we'll just put a little bit of white in there. So now we're getting a pale kind of a violet color. But we want to lighten it even more. We don't want it to really compete with the other colors too much. In my photo, it barely reads as a purple. It's almost like a gray. So we'll do something similar there. This is a pretty dark color. Let's just dab a little bit on the side. It's darker. It's a little more red, too, than the previous color. That's all right, though. We'll just keep mixing a little more off to the side now. I might need even need all of this white. We'll see how it goes. This will also kind of help us cover the ground a little more fully, because if you look closely at this painting, there are areas that are kind of thin and almost wash-like. Okay, so that's close enough in terms of value. It's not the exact color. It's not an exact color match, but it's close enough to where I'm okay with it. So I could use a slightly bigger brush, but I'm okay with this because I want to be careful around the edges of my objects. And what I'm going to do is just start covering up everything. I don't really want a flat coverage necessarily. So if little bits of the previous layer show through, that's actually kind of a good thing, kind of a happy accident. That'll give the painting a little richer colors. And this is also a chance, now that I've got some nice thicker paint, to go back and clean up some of my edges. Alright, this is a nice thing where you can kind of tighten up the focus and the contrast of the painting a little bit. Okay. And then while this paint is still wet, I'm going to try to go back and blend in some better shadows underneath my peppers here. And again, don't be scared to kind of paint over what you've already done. All right? Try to go in with the attitude that whatever it is you do to your painting, you're going to be improving it. Don't be scared to lose something that you previously had. Again, I'm working from my photo reference at this point, so make sure that you have that. I mean, at this point, you should have, because again, these peppers, unfortunately, went bad a while ago. Started getting all shrivelly and spotty, so that's the one disadvantage of working with organic objects like vegetables and fruit and stuff, is that some of it lasts a while. Like an apple will last a while, but something like a banana or a pepper, you really only got a small window to work with those kinds of things before they start to spoil. And that's actually kind of an interesting challenge you can set up for yourself. Like, can I finish this painting in the small amount of time I have? But I always take photos just to, cover my bases. Okay. So now I'm getting some color back. Putting some fresh paint on top of this. Again, I'm not really worrying about perfect flat color. If I have a little spot here and there where I see the brush strokes, that can actually work in your favor. You don't want your painting to look sloppy or messy by any means, but the nice thing about painting, and I've said this before, is that it's a little open for kind of stylistic interpretation. So if you maybe have a looser painting style, a little more gestural, same as like with a drawing, you can actually get some nice effects without having to do a super tight painting. One of my favorite painters of all time is John Singer Sargent. He had an incredibly loose kind of post-impressionistic style that is really hard to copy. I wish I could paint like him. But his his paintings are very loose. When you look at them up close, they just look like random brushstrokes, but as you step away from the painting, it all comes together and it works perfectly. It's one of the nice things I like about painting is that there's a flexibility there that is nice. Okay. So you got little remnants of other colors up in the top part of my brush that, I'm not even worrying about it. If it starts coming off onto the painting, I'm just kind of working it in, and that's kind of giving a little bit of variation, a little bit of warm and cool spots that show up in the painting. That's again one of those happy accidents that you can make work for you. Okay, so now I'm going to start mixing up a little bit of shadow color to blend in with this. So again, I'm using some dark red, dark blue, a little bit of brown mixed together. And I'm just going in and trying to blend that in. Like so. With my purple. And again, they're just very thin. Strips of shadow in here on the underside of objects. And where the shadows are not as dark, I'm lightening up the color just a bit. And I have areas of fainter shadows where the cloth is sort of folded a little bit. Like that. And again, I'm just looking at my photo reference, looking at my still life, and I'm Right now I'm just sort of suggesting some areas of shadow, okay? I'm not trying to do fully rendered wrinkles and stuff in the cloth yet, but I'm just trying to break up the flatness of it just a bit. And I don't really need to, I'm not trying to render every single fold I see in the cloth. I'm just trying to get some of the more dominant shapes in here. Okay. Right, so it's subtle, but now I've got a little bit of contrast in the ground here, something I can work off of. Doesn't really read as a full-fledged wrinkled cloth yet, but it's something I can start adding more layers on top of. So when you're doing something like shadows or like wrinkles in cloth, I find it helpful to just sort of try to look for similar values with each pass you do. Like you can start with doing the darker values first or the lighter values first. I kind of going for like more like the middle values that I'm filling in. And then I can go back and punch this up with some darker and darker shadows, lighter highlights. Okay. All right. But see, now those objects are starting to feel like they are really resting on um, the surface, right? They don't feel like they're floating in a sea of purple. They're starting to feel grounded. Okay. Now, while this is still relatively wet, I'm going to I've been using my flat brush here. Now I'm going to use my smaller round brush and start to punch up these shadows just a bit, okay? Remember I talked in the last video about how, you know, shadows have color and color reflects. So I'm going to try to add a little bit of other color. And here's where I think I will need just a small little bit of yellow, not much. And I'm going to try to add some reflected color in some of these shadows. So, for instance, here underneath the orange peppers, I'm going to put just a little bit of dark orange color. It'll almost be like a brown. Put just a little tiny hint of blue in there. Try to work most of it out on my brush, but just a little fraction amount. And I'm going to go in and warm up this shadow just a bit. It doesn't take much. But see already just that little bit of orange, and you might not be able to see it on the video, but just adding that tiny little bit of warm orange to that shadow. It almost looks like a brown, but it's a little more intense than a brown. Just that little bit is really helping to make that shadow pop. And it's doing it in a way that like black would not do. Black could not achieve this because, again, it's too flat. Black flattens things out. I'm also going to do a little bit here underneath this one as well. A warm object will cast a warm shadow. Even if it's on a cool colored object like this purple, they're still going to get a little just on the underside, like where it's close to the object. So I'm just going to intensify these shadows just a little bit more on the warmer objects. The yellows and oranges. Okay. All right. And again, I wouldn't attempt this with one of your larger brushes. You should have use your smallest brush in your set for this. And if you're using a flat brush, that's okay. Just maybe use the side of the brush. Okay. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but starting to get some some intense, darker, but warm shadows. And it's all with red, blue, and brown, with maybe just a hint of yellow that I'm achieving this with. I'm doing it mainly on the warm colored objects. So I'm getting a nice little warm shadow. And it's not even completely covering. It's again, it's almost like a glaze. It's just working. It's letting the color of the previous colors show through a little bit, but and again, I'm occasionally just, since I have a smaller brush, having to go in and wet it a little more often. It's not holding as much water as a bigger brush would. And I've still got my little bit of purple here. Go and mix that in. Scroll over to different parts of my photo. I'm going in and laying in some lighter values here with a little bit of purple and some whiter color. And this will take a little bit of finessing, going back and forth. And I'm just kind of laying these wrinkles in here. Watching my time. I need to pause and start a new video here in a second so I don't run into my past problem of making a video that's too long and then I can't upload it. Okay, so now these are starting to feel a little more like folds and drapery and stuff like that. And now I've got some shadows that feel a little more like they're reflecting color. I still got to work on this a little bit, but okay, so Okay. Got a little bit of glare there, but starting to come along. Okay, so keep working this a little bit more and move on to the next step.